All right, Lance. So defensive side of the ball here, going against RHETT LASHLEE. The group chats have all been talking about, hey, they're just waiting to see RJ Maryland running wide open like Will Mallory used to do on some of these plays where the quarterback fakes the run and the tight ends are streaking down the field, or maybe a Chris Johnson getting matched up on a wheel route with Mo Toure and they just loft it over and he's off to the races. I mean, these plays have all ran in the group chat all week as people prepare for this RHETT LASHLEE offense that we are very familiar with. So seeing this offense on tape and in person, to me, looks a little slower maybe than it has in the past, from at least from a personnel standpoint. Obviously, Chris Johnson, we know what kind of speed he has when he gets going, but I don't see the quick twitch that maybe I've seen in the past with these guys. But you tell me, both personnel-wise and scheme-wise, what you see with this SMU offense.
Yeah, I'll kind of start with the scheme. Realistically, he's going to be formation heavy into the boundary, right? He's really going to be stack and bunch heavy. I already kind of talked about like why I like to see that on offense. LASHLEE definitely leans into that quite a bit. You know, his core is going to be that tempo, just like you talked about. You're going to see tempo. They're going to run fast. They're going to really run fast after they get the first down on a drive, right? So a lot of times what you're going to see the first couple of plays, they're going to run more of a typical type pace. But after they get that first down and identify what your personnel is when they got that first down, that's when they're really going to press the pedal, because they want to press the bruise, right? They want to identify what is it that they can do against your personnel package that you have out there, and then trap you in that personnel package so you can't sub, right, to adjust against that. That's absolutely what the whole plan with the pace to be is, to, trap you in a personnel package that you don't want to be in against an advantageous offensive look, right? So they're going to be guard, tackle, counter heavy in their run game. They're going to really run a lot of those RPOs, but they're going to run glance choice. And when I say like choice, they have a lot of one-word calls for their choice. So they're going to run with double stacks. So think in your head, right, where you've got two receivers that are stacked on both sides. What that does is that allows them to have leverage to both sides. So your defense at this point has to try and keep numbers to both sides. So when you have the double stacks, you can now block on the edges. So you can run when I talk about the choice part of things, your quarterback has a choice, right? He's just counting numbers. So if you're light inside, we call that the box, right? You can now run that inside counter, that guard tackle counter, and you've got individuals on the edge that can block if you decide that you're going to run the outside, either sweep or, maybe a motion that's going to run outside. And then there's a third part of that you see so often, and you talked about it, Danny. You had great information there where you talk about, Toure kind of getting on a running back there, right? Well, now you have to stay firm with your run fits, but you also have to identify who's covering who out of that bunch, right? You're going to have switch releases at times. And what that really means is they just switch, right? The one becomes the two and the two becomes the one. And you have to remember, okay, well, I'm the one now when he switched, or I'm the two now, right? And I have seen so many times in LASHLEE's career, right, where the two insides take the one because they don't realize you've switched, and now the two becomes the one vertical, and he's wide open. Rambo had a touchdown against Georgia Tech, pretty famously on that, where Georgia Tech jumped doubles inside, the exact play I'm talking about. You see that from LASHLEE all the time on film. You're really going to see a lot of one words. They're going to be trying to do things that are called open stack, which basically just means they're trying to get their stacks to leverage you in the run game, right? So now if you don't step out and have a 3x2 on one side, which is kind of like a typical defense for those stacks outside, it looks like a triangle if you're watching as a defense, right? You kind of outside leverage, inside leverage, and then a point person who's up close to the line of scrimmage, right? And what he's trying to do is basically be a wedge buster on those if they throw a screen to the back stack. So LASHLEE's very simple offense, right? He's going to run these looks over and over and over, and then he just has counters out of that or choice out of that, and the quarterback's really just counting numbers. I did a lot of upon further reviews back in the day on LASHLEE, only it was on our side, right? And I over and over pointed out the fact that he makes it really easy for the quarterback. He's just trying to count, right? So if you've got 5 in the box inside, I know where I'm going with it. If I've got 7 in the box and I've got 2 outside with 3 blockers, I know where I'm going with it. And so the quarterback pre-snap already has a pretty determined where he's going to go with it. And then, of course, what Heatherman's trying to do is he's trying to play games where it looks like he's got 5 in the box, but he's got a creeper to make it 6. Or it looks like they've got the B gap open, and then he's going to insert post-snap or long arm, which is like a defender who's going to be outside of a tackle. Oftentimes he's going to long stick or long gap, right? And so he's going to jump from the C to the A. And then you're going to replace with the inside nose who's going to scrape or spill outside the B. And so now you've replaced 3 gaps post look, and the offense runs right into your what you trapped them to make it look like you had an open B gap. So those are kind of the games that you're going to see between these coordinators quite a bit. Here's the thing that really stood out to me as well when I was kind of watching these teams on film that really caught my eye is that Simons runs a defense very similar to what Heatherman runs. It's almost like they're from the same tree. They're not. Simons comes from the Hugh Freeze tree. So if you kind of think of Auburn's defense a little bit, that's kind of the influence that he has. But they're very, 4-2-5, post-snap creepers, post-safety, cover 3, cover 1, just like Miami. So what does that mean? That means these teams are practicing against a defensive look that's pretty similar, or they have in the past. Right now you're running a lot of scout and you're practicing for the next team. But fall camp, spring camp, you practiced against that look all the time. And so now which coach makes the better adjustments is going to be like the key chess match you see.
Lance, we're getting a lot of questions about the center spot. James Brockermeyer has not been his best, showings the last couple of weeks. If you talk to people inside the building, he was arguably their highest, not arguably, he was their highest graded lineman for like the first month of the season. So obviously he hasn't been great the last couple of weeks, but there's a lot of people who are saying, hey, is he the reason they are struggling at times on the inside run? Is there anything you see with his play? People are suggesting, do they throw Ryan Rodriguez in there? And I talked about it yesterday. It's my opinion is that center, such a communication position, like continuity position that, listen, if he stinks it up the next few weeks here, I'm not going to say anything's off the table, but I would have a hard time believing they're just going to make a switch, in the middle to now later part of the season at that spot. But your opinion?
Yeah. So again, it may not be the most popular with your listeners at times, but Miami has not done any favors for Brockermeyer, right? It is unusual for you to line your center up and expect him to take a nose tackle one-on-one as they have so often this year. And frankly, in many games, he's done a really good job with it, but it is unusual for you to lock your center one-on-one into the nose tackle as often as Miami does. Most of the time, these teams, what they're doing is that center is a secondary blocker to that nose tackle, right? And so you've got someone else engaging that nose tackle first, or you've got a double team on that nose tackle and your center is kind of secondary and he's either looking to get under the shoulder and move him and help the initial block for the guard and then get to a second level. That's oftentimes what your center is really trying to do. Other times you'll see your center try and get one gap over and get to the 3 tech, who's typically a smaller, more explosive player than your nose tackle is going to typically be. This is all generalities. It's not every play, but that's typically what you're asking your center to do and get those reach blocks. So they're really going to be moving a lot more than what Miami has asked Brockermeyer to do the last couple of weeks against some of these long nose tackles. He has not played super great. I won't, dispute that fact, but they're putting him in spots that are difficult for him to do. And the biggest thing you want Brockermeyer to do in a one-on-one versus a nose tackle in those situations is to lose slower. So because you realize he's got, a 30-pound disadvantage on a lot of these players. You just need him to lose a little bit slower than he did on that 4th and 1 and maybe a couple of other times where he gave up his chest quick. What I mean by giving up your chest is allowing those longer, nose tackles to get into your chest. And at that point, you've lost leverage. You're usually going to lose 2 yards. That can interrupt your guards who are pin, pulling, doing those different actions that your guards are trying to do behind them. When your center gets pushed back, you can trip those guys. They've got a bubble around them. that really blows those plays up. So what you really need him to do against those nose tackles is a long-winded way of saying you need him to lose a little bit slower. And I think you could also stand to give him a little more help on some of those inside runs where you're short yardage and really just needing to get push.
Real quick, I'll let you go after this. But when Miami was playing DJ Lagway, you kind of called that like a career game for him, right?
Yeah,
like that's what
that was a week early.
Potentially have here. Well, that's what we potentially have here with Zion Nelson, man. Let me tell you, I'm going D money mode here, like he did with Lagway. I think he plays a heck of a game, and I think he holds his own against Bain if they're matched up.
I hope it goes the same way as my prediction.
I hope so too, man. I hope so too. But that's my bold prediction right there. No one's gonna agree with it, but
yeah, that is bold.
I'm not gonna agree with that. I would be highly surprised if anyone fares well against Bain outside of the cut techniques that Louisville employed against him. That's the only thing I've seen that has worked against Bain. I've seen a lot of holding. I've seen some face mask pulls. I've seen a lot of jersey pulls, things like that not getting called. But what's worked within the scope of the rules, in my view, has been those cut blocks. And that's difficult, to have a defender be able to play all of that. But that's kind of where I'm at with Bain. I think he takes it to Zion.
So back to the personnel here for SMU on offense.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to look, RJ Maryland, he's pretty impressive. The guy probably should be a Cane, right? Russell Maryland's son. He looks like he can go. Romello Brinson, we know what he is, or at least we've seen him talent-wise, skill-set-wise. Now he's starting to put together on the field, produce for them. Chris Johnson. Brashard Smith, who didn't work out with us for a variety of reasons. Me and Pete have covered that pretty in depth, but certainly his twitch and suddenness in the backfield was a big part of what they do. You see some injury concerns with Jennings. Just overall, how do you assess the talent level of SMU's offense, and maybe even compare it to what you remember from last year when they were statistically a better offense?
Yeah, they're a little bit down compared to last year. They probably were a little more explosive outside. Chris Johnson has not been as good as Brashard Smith. I can tell you that with certainty. I kind of, watched Brashard Smith quite a bit last year, and I've watched Chris Johnson this year. Not that Chris Johnson's been bad. He just hasn't been to the kind of the level that Brashard Smith was able to play for them last year. Honestly, I was more impressed with SMU's backup running back. He's a little bit more of a hammer type, that physical guy, that you don't want to tackle. I think Miami's kind of got the size and athletes to be able to match up a little bit better with that than some other teams have. And this is the type of game that Miami just has a clear and distinct personnel advantage at every spot on the field, in my opinion. Even including wide receiver. I think Brinson's a nice player. I was never super high on Brinson, remember some of those back in the days. I thought he was good for one of those low IQ plays every game. And that's kind of continued this year as well. He's had a couple of fumbles, maybe some drops, things like that. Jennings has also backed up a little bit, in my opinion, from last year. I think one of the things that happens as quarterbacks go throughout their careers, right, is at the beginning, you kind of find some things that are working for you. Defenses adjust, try to take some of your strengths away and ask you to do other things or put you in spots to maybe take some longer outside the hash numbers throws. And Jennings has struggled a little bit more this year on making some of those throws than he did last year. His deep ball has also not been quite as good, in my opinion. Some of those vertical shots, if you're putting it in that context. So I think everything's kind of taken a step back for SMU, and really the results have also kind of shown us that, right? I mean, scoring like 12 points or whatever it is, against a Wake Forest is not something you would have seen last year. So I think all around, this is a game Miami's got to win.